A verbal contract is not what the paper is printed on. Our comedies are not to be laughed at. I read part of it all the way through. There is a statute of limitations. Anyone who sees a psychiatrist needs his head examined. Goldwynisms, that's what they call them. There's only one thing wrong with that. I never said any of them. No, two of them stood here. Most of them were made up by Eddie Cantor or George Kaufman. Like they've got nothing better to do with my time. Like I'm paying them to make stupid remarks. Do I resent it? Why should I resent it? Listen, I'd rather be known as a guy who says funny things than as a mean son of a bitch like Harry Cowen or a child molester like Louis Mayer. Thing is, Doc, I'm not sleeping so good these days. Not the end of the world. It's just, I never had trouble sleeping, not even when Frank Godsoul wanted to send me off up to the Yukon, or Mary Pickford was suing the ass off me. She's still suing the ass off me. What the hell do I care? I wanted to try therapy. Everybody's doing therapy these days and raving about it. But Frances didn't want me to. She said it would break up our marriage. Can you believe that? What a woman I married. I got nothing against therapy. You know, back before the last war, I wrote Professor Freud and offered to make a movie about him. He never replied. Too bad. It would have made a great movie. All that stuff about dreams.
Oh, bravo. Lewis.
Good to see you, Bill.
And you. Thank you for joining me. Please.
Thank you.
Sit down. Right, well, hi there. Welcome along, everybody. I'm William Huntley, but you can call me Bill, as you know. I'm joined today by an old friend of mine, Lewis Cowen. We've just seen a snippet from his one-man show, which we'll be talking about a little bit later on. But Lewis, thank you very much for joining me here this morning.
Pleasure.
And we are actually in Handel House, which is the home of Devizes Books, which is a fabulous building. And so books by the bundle, but also if anybody's putting on a show or anything in Devizes, 9 times out of 10 you can guarantee that you'll buy the tickets here as well. But we will be talking a little bit more about this venue at a later date. Today we're going to be talking to Lewis about his career as a person. Lewis, yes. You started off from bonnie Scotland.
Well, yes, I was born and brought up in Glasgow, and went to school there, went to university there, and on leaving university, this was back in the early 70s when there was no work in Scotland at all.
Right.
So I got on a train and came south.
Okay, and you came south to where?
Well, to London.
Yeah.
I had friends who'd moved down here as well, so I sort of kicked on their floor for a little while. I managed to get myself a place at the drama school in London because I thought better to be an unemployed actor as an unemployed nothing. So I went off to drama school and had a most wonderful year, and then had a job before I left.
Which drama school was it you went to?
Well, I went to a place called the Drama Studio, which is in Ealing. It offered a 1-year course, which is all I could afford. And it taught me all I needed to know. You know, it taught me technique. And I firmly believe that nobody can teach you how to act. You either can or you can't.
Right.
But you do need to know things about speech and voice and movement and those kind of things. And I'm always aware that people who work a lot on television seem to forget how to use their voice, how to produce their voice properly.
Yeah.
Or perhaps they never learn.
Perhaps they never. I will now use a proper stage actor's voice. Okay, what was the first job then, Lewis, when you left?
Well, I was, as I say, I was very fortunate. I got a job with the Theatre and Education Company that was based at the Phoenix Theatre in Leicester.
Right.
So I got to know Leicester and its environs very well, and you know, every day we'd get in the back of a van and travel to schools in Ashby de la Zouche.
And named a conjurer.
Yes. And what's that other lovely place where they make the Stilton cheese? Milton Mowbray.
Milton Mowbray, right?
Yes, I know all the schools around there.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful introduction to the theatre. I enjoyed it very much.
Well, I can imagine, you know, quite a glamour industry. A lot of hard work, I know, but I mean, we tend to see the glamour side of it, of course. And you're learning your craft, learning your trade.
That's right.
And then you moved back to London, and you went to the West End.
Oh, well, eventually, I did an awful lot of work with community theatre and in repertory around the country before that happened. But I eventually got some work at Worcester Rep, the Swan Theatre, and I seemed to keep coming back there. Well, a couple that I'd met there, Terry Whale and his wife Leslie Mackey. Terry wrote a musical play for Leslie about Judy Garland, which was called Judy.
Right.
And they very kindly cast me in a couple of very meaty parts in that. So in the first act I played Louis B. Mayer, who's the head of MGM. And in the second act I played Sid Luft, who was Judy Garland's third husband.
That's right.
Very different characters, but both parts really, really meaty.
Yeah.
And eventually, well, we first performed it in Worcester, and then it was snapped up by Bristol Old Vic, and from there it went into London. It lasted 9 weeks in the West End, because unfortunately it coincided with the American attack on Libya. And so no Americans were travelling that year.
Of course not.
So unfortunately it folded. But in fact this was the beginning of the end of my theatrical career, because I was put up for an awful lot of parts as either small fat Jewish men or big hunky gangster types. And I would walk into a casting session and the director would kind of look at the casting director as if to say, what's he doing here? Because I didn't look like either of these types. And after a couple of years of this, I read the writing on the wall and decided to look for a job closer to home. By this time, my wife and I had moved to Wiltshire. We moved to Urchfont.
Yeah.
And I still don't know which guardian angel was looking after me, but I managed to get a job on the local newspaper, the little free newspaper, the Devizes News.
I remember it, yes, I remember it.
Which was lovely, because it wasn't that demanding. I just had to find enough copy to fill the space between the adverts each week. But you do build up your contacts and your rapport with local people.
Sure.
And people start approaching you with stories. And so eventually I was actually getting stories that the Gazette and Herald weren't.
Right, okay.
But as everybody knows, the Devizes News was owned by a group called Newscom, which were taken over in the year 2000 by News Quest, which owns the Gazette and Herald. So I got back from a holiday in Australia to find I was working for a completely different newspaper. And I suppose I hadn't looked back ever since.
Taking all your contacts with you, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, but, you know.
And so how many years, roughly, then, were you a newspaper reporter? I mean, coming away from a glamour industry to reporting about the glamour.
Well, in fact, journalism is a glamour industry in itself, I suppose. I was very lucky to have two allegedly glamorous careers. But I reported the Devizes area for 24 years, 10 years with the Devizes News and 14 years with the Gazette, up until June this year.
And then you took retirement.
And then I took retirement.
Yeah. Any anecdote stories from your time as a journalist, Lewis? Anybody you met really nice and...
Oh, well, I mean, I met so many wonderful people. It was absolutely great. And you just sort of, you don't really realise it at the time, you know, just how lucky you are. But for example, when William Hague, when he was leader of the Tory party, he came to Devizes. And it was about the time he'd sort of claimed to have drunk 13 pints a night or something like that. So the press call became all about that. But with him, as one of his backup team, was Sebastian Coe.
Right, Lord Coe.
And I had a lovely conversation with him.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing I could use in the paper.
No, quite.
But it was just fascinating, talking to somebody like him with that kind of background. And you suddenly realise I'm talking to a national icon here.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was an awful lot of occasions like that. And most of them, I don't even remember at the moment. We were talking before about Ian Holm, who is just one of the best actors that this country has ever produced. And at that time he was living in Wootton Rivers, and he was a great supporter of the Wiltshire Wildlife Trust.
Yeah.
And he came along to one of their press calls, and I got to chat with him, and he was being very open with me. He was talking about all the problems he was having with his son. You shouldn't be telling me all this. But of course, I didn't use it.
Yeah. We won't be telling any of this, Ian, of
No.
course. No. But so, I suppose if somebody doesn't have to actually be a celebrity to be interesting and fascinating to chat to.
Absolutely not. This is one of the great joys of working for a local paper, that you meet local people who have got the most fascinating stories to tell. I suppose I should have actually sort of sat and thought last night about the kind of people that you would be interested in, but there are just too many, and people who do extraordinary things, people who have lived through really quite difficult situations, like the couple, I'm not going to mention their names, but the couple who live in Devizes, and the wife needed a new kidney.
Right.
And her husband donated the kidney. And from her point of view, the operation was a complete success.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in removing the kidney, they did something. And he required intensive care.
Oh, God.
But it was a wonderful story,
Sure.
and fortunately he made a complete recovery.
Oh, thank God for that. But it's the old adage, though, isn't it? No good turn goes unpunished.
That's right. Yes.
How often it works that way. You do somebody a good turn and you end up paying the price for it. So, yeah, okay, not just local celebrities, which there are a lot of famous, semi-famous people living in and around the Devizes area.
Well, Wiltshire's one of those counties, isn't it?
Well, I suppose it's close enough to London and you get far enough away as well, isn't it?
That's right. And also, it isn't like Somerset that sort of tends to attract loads and loads of people, so you can be left more or less on your own. But I'm always surprised by the number of people who live here. People from television, like Paul, what's his name from Flogget?
Oh, Paul Martin.
Paul
yeah.
Martin.
Yes.
Charming man.
Indeed, yes, he is.
And somebody from the Antiques Roadshow.
Oh, Clive Farrah. Yes, Clive's an old friend of mine.
Again, somebody else who is absolutely charming, and no side to them at all.
No. Clive. I know Clive better than I know Paul. And Clive is charming. He's a smashing man. He really is. In fact, he did an appraisal, because I run the Sunday and the Monday market in the Shambles Market Hall, and he came in and did a book appraisal free of charge. He said, he's done sort of a bottle of wine and a few bits and pieces to say thank you, But charming man. And
you always find this though with the ones who have talent, the ones who have knowledge, the ones who know about their own abilities and secure on it, are very open, very approachable, and easy to get on with.
Yeah.
Some people who believe their own publicity
Yeah.
are absolutely very difficult. Let me put it that
We'll
way.
let it just hang there.
Yes.
Because, again, talking of local celebrities, sadly no longer with us, but it was George Baker.
Oh, he was
charming
wonderful.
man.
Yes,
charming
wonderful man.
He was Inspector Wexford on the television, but his movie career and acting career was phenomenal. The stuff that he was in.
Well, I remember him particularly as Tiberius on I, Claudius, the television series, and it was an extraordinary performance, totally believable performance. He was a great actor. He wasn't just another telly star. He had so much talent and so much ability. And he was so nice.
He was. Do you know that Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond books, actually wanted him to be James Bond?
Oh yes. he quotes that in his own book. George wrote this book, the Way to Wexford.
Way to Wexford, yeah.
And he actually describes that Ian Fleming sort of called him and said, "Yeah, you're my James Bond."
You're my James Bond. And of course, I mean, both Lewis and myself knew George, and I mean, he was such a commanding person, wasn't he? He was a big man, and he projected himself without showing off. You know, he was just a very noticeable man by the very nature of charisma. And talking of charisma, you've now moved on from your acting, I beg your pardon, from your newspaper career, and I'm sure there's memoirs coming at some stage.
I don't think so. I don't think anybody would be interested.
I'm sure they would. I'd buy a copy. So now you're going back to your roots, which is acting.
That's right.
And you're very heavily involved with our local Wharf Theatre. And you're doing your own one-man show, which we had a snippet of to start off the show.
That's right, yes. It's called Include Me Out, which is another Goldwynism, of course.
Okay.
And I've done it in Devizes. In fact, I first performed it at the Wharf a few years back, and then redid it again this year in this very room that we're sitting at the moment. I did it for 2 nights and also did it over at the Marden House Centre in Cowen. But I will be doing it next spring at the Everyman Theatre in Cheltenham.
Right.
The 11th and 12th of March, if anybody would like to put that in their diaries.
Put it in your diary. Well, and hopefully, pardon me, that if we can get something sorted locally within Devizes, because I did actually come to the evening, or one of the evenings that Lewis did the show here at Handel House, and it was fantastic. I mean, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, a name synonymous with Hollywood, of course. The isms, I believed them until I'd seen Lewis's show, because I thought all these things he had actually said, but quite possibly, according to you, that he probably didn't.
No, I mean, he did mangle the English language, there's no question about that, because he never actually learned it properly. He picked it up as he went along. When he arrived in, well, in fact, he arrived in England when he was 15 or 16, and he lived in Birmingham for a while. But he lived with a Jewish community, so he spoke Yiddish. And it was only when he moved into glove salesmanship that it was incumbent upon him to actually speak the language. That he virtually taught himself. I think he sort of probably taught himself by going to the theatre, because he had a very theatrical turn of phrase, but he just managed to get it not quite right, you know. Sort of, you know, I've got in my show, he took me under his arm rather than he took me under his wing. You know, it was nearly there, but not quite.
Nearly there. And so, well, I mean, I can only say, if you get the opportunity, and if you're living locally and it's in Devizes again, do make a point of coming along. If you love the movies, if you love the media, it's well worth coming along to see. Now, I know that Lewis has got a prior engagement, so we can't make this mini-doc any longer than we've got now. So, Lewis, I'd just like to take this opportunity to say thank you so much for joining me here today. Hope you've enjoyed this. If so, keep tuning in to Devizes Television. This is courtesy of White Horse Productions. My special guest today, Lewis Cowen. Lewis, thank you so very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. Until the next time, bye-bye for now.